Hello everyone and good afternoon. I hope you enjoyed the lunch. I'm here to, as Marcus said, tell you something about the security of modern wireless desktop sets. First of all, that's me. I'm an IT security consultant, all seated up. So IT security consultant, mainly a pen tester more. So I'm interested in everything security, mostly when it comes to, well, embedded systems, hardware, radio protocols, and stuff like this. This is my dear colleague, Matthias. He is unfortunately not here with me, but the research I'm presenting is a team effort. So everything you see, we did this together. Short agenda. Well, we will talk about the used technology, the previous work of other researchers, and I will give you a quick overview over the research of others and our research, of course. We will discuss on the attack surface and scenarios, and of course, the most interesting part, the found security vulnerabilities. I hope there will be some demos, at least some on video, and I will try a live one too. And at the end, of course, conclusion, recommendations, and if we have time left, a short Q&A session. So what I'm talking about when I say wireless desktop systems, this it is. So it's basically, well, a keyboard, a wireless mice, and a dongle. This is, well, the setup you use. And for us to analyze, well, at least the radio protocol, we need more stuff. First of all, there's software-defined radio. Is everyone familiar with software-defined radio, or at least what it is? So it's basically a thing of hardware, a piece of hardware that is capable to receive and transmit any form of radio waves. And what you want to do with these radio waves, you can all define this in software. There's a crazy radio PA. We will talk about this later, and there's the Logitech unifying dongle receiver. That's the original receiver, but we can reprogram that receiver to serve our purposes. Previous work, there was the Kikeriki project. These guys checked out Microsoft keyboards that were encrypting, wireless keyboards that were encrypting, and found out that the security is, well, mostly not present. They were able to build a sniffer for that. Travis Goodspeed developed some kind of promiscuous mode for the NRF24. That will be later important for us. The NRF24 is the chip that is used in, well, most of the wireless desktop sets. Semikamkar, as part of the NSA playset, developed a key sniffer too, again for the Microsoft keyboards, the old one, the bad ones. He just shrinked it down so that it fits into a power adapter where you can charge your smartphone, but also there's a keyboard sniffer in there. And some time ago, the Bastille Networks released the mouse jack attack and tools for that. We later switched to that tool in our research, so we heavily rely on that. Our research ourselves, it started as a customer project. As I said, I'm mainly a pen tester, so there was a customer of us. They said, well, I want to use wireless desktop sets, and I have these 3 wireless desktop sets. All of them advertise themselves as being secure because of the use of AES. These 3 was the first 3. We later looked at the Logitech and the Perex too. Because we had a lot more important things to do, basically earning money with pen testing. It was a very fragmented research project, so we were not working on this all the time. So these are the keyboards. And I will want to try to give you a quick, quick overview of the testing methodology we use, so the approach we want to analyze these keyboards. First of all, well, there's the hardware. So we can open up the hardware, we can look at the PCB boards in there, we can try to identify the chips that are on such a keyboard or dongle. And, well, if we identify the chips, we can read the manuals for that chips, find interesting test point. In this case, it was SPI. It might include soldering some wires or something like this for the firmware analysis. Well, once we get the firmware analysis, at least for the NF24, we can load that into IDA Pro. It's an 8051 compatible instruction set. We can start disassembling, read more documentation. There's also an SDK available from Nordic Semiconductors, the manufacturer of that NF24 chipset. And well, you can look around to try to compile code, write your own code, and reverse it. Last but not least, the radio-based analysis. Of course, it is a wireless desktop system, so we can have a look at the wireless spectrum. Our first approach was to do this with a software-defined radio. It's not that easy, so we were not very familiar with these devices at that time. So we watched a lot of videos from Michael Osman. We read more documentation, played around with other tools that are available in the internet. For example, down there, the NF24 Bluetooth Low Energy decoder. Don't get that mixed up. The NF24 uses a proprietary protocol, but the decoder is able to decode NF24 package as well as Bluetooth Low Energy package. And later we had a look at, of course, the mouse check attack and the tools that were released with it. It's much more easy to use. So, what did we do? Well, we opened up all the devices, as I said, and we identified the chips that were used. And as you can see in most keyboards or in dongles, they're using some version of the NF24 chipset. So, of course, that was our way to go. Well, maybe in the future, we haven't done it yet. We will have a look at the Fujitsu Wireless Keyboard 2. But for now, we focus on the NF24. Some interesting things from the data sheet, so then that you get a quick overview how this chip works and what interesting functions are in this chip. Well, this is what it looks like, at least the pinout. First interesting thing we noticed was the SPI interface. So this is just a simple serial interface that most microcontrollers have to communicate with other peripheral. In this case, you can use the SPI interface to program that chip to and even to read out the firmware if it's not locked. So as you can see down here, there's a flag that you can set, well, when the device is going for the production, for the final release to the customer, you can set the readout protection flag and you're no longer able to read out the firmware via SPI. Another interesting thing is the non-volatile memory that is on that chip. Well, you can store configuration data, maybe cryptographic key material on that. We will talk about this later. Interesting thing here is you can access the normal endurance data, non-volatile data from SPI, but the extended endurance section is not accessible via SPI. You can have a look at the radio protocol too. The radio protocol is documented in the same data sheet too. So everything you need, you will find there, how it is decoded. And another interesting thing, why it's easy to use encryption for that wireless protocol is down here. So these chips have a coprocessor, an AES coprocessor to encrypt with a high performance. And you don't have to implement your own AES encryption. This is what the hardware looks like. This is from a Microsoft keyboard. And well, in that case, they made it very easy for us. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with a little bit of hardware hacking, but the SPI interface is here, here, and here, and they even marked the pin outs where we have to connect to access the SPI interface from the chip and maybe try to read out the firmware. So it was very easy on that. Just open up and we already had the pins where we want to have a closer look. Same goes for the Cherry wireless keyboard we analyzed. It actually did not mark the pins, but they were easily accessible on that header or on that test points out there. So we can connect. This is a bus pirate up here. It's a simple device that speaks SPI. You can hook it up to a computer using USB, and you can talk to the chip. A little bit more complicated, it was on the dongle, at least on the Cherry dongle. The pins were not accessible in an easy way. Unfortunately, my dear colleague Alexander has a very calm hand when it comes to soldering, so he was able to solder these very thin wires on there, so we are able to access the SPI interface. Firmware analysis, well, pretty much straightforward. You can load that into IDA Pro or something similar that is familiar with the AT51 instruction set, and you can decompile and reverse it.
Does that mean they weren't protected?
We will have a look at that later when we.
Could you repeat the question for us?
Oh, sorry, yeah. The question was, could we read the firmware? I can take it up front. Yes, we were able, and we will have a look at this later as well. So this is actually the proof. We read the firmware as it says down here. It's from the Cherry firmware, the actual AES encryption algorithm we identified, and where they access the AES coprocessor. For the radio-based analysis, well, you can take GNU Radio with your software-defined radio, build a simple flow graph, hook that flow graph up to the Bluetooth Low Energy and NRF24 decoder. So this is just demodulation, and the decoding of the package is done by the other tool that was available on the internet. And you will get, well, easy to read package, payload, the address of the keyboard, the length, and all the things you need. We later changed to the set that was released with the mouse jack attack. They did some similar research than us, and they're also targeting NRF24 chipsets, and it turns out it's way more easy, well, to just use the chip itself, an NRF24 chip, to talk to another NRF24 chip than using a software-defined radio, and that's what they did. They used the Crazy Radio PA. This is, well, I have it with me here. This small dongle. It's basically just a breakout board for the NRF24 chipset with an amplifier on the board, so it can extend the range. It was designed for like drones, quadcopters, hobbyists, but you can use it for hacking keyboards too. And the firmware is really easy to use. Once you flash it, you can just write 3 Python lines and you are able to transmit package in the format of the NRF24. So let's talk about the attack surface of such keyboards. First of all, okay, there are 2 main sections we can think of, 2 main approaches. First of all, physical access. Of course, if we can open up the device, maybe we can extract the firmware, we can manipulate the firmware, maybe we get access to the cryptographic keys. Of course, the cryptographic keys for the AES encryption should be somewhere on these keyboards or dongles. And the other approach is to look at the radio signals, the air interface. Maybe we'll find some unencrypted, unauthenticated communication. Maybe simple replay attacks will work, or more complicated attacks like keystroke injection or even decrypting some packages might be possible. So that was our assumption. Just a quick overview of what we will talk about next. What we actually found. So most of these points we actually were managed to find in these products. So first of all, there was insufficient firmware and code protection. We will have a look at this. There was unencrypted and unauthenticated communication. We were able to perform. So there was missing protection against replay attacks too, so we were able to perform such replay attacks. And even in some cases there were replay protection, but it was, well, in some kind insufficient, and you can still manage to replay some keystrokes. And we found even other cryptographic issues as well. We will have a look at this now. First of all, so this is where we have a closer look into the things we found, and the first thing we found, well, was the obvious one. We had to extract the firmware in order to understand the device better. So what we tried is just to hook up on these SPI interfaces that are available on these chips in mice, keyboards, dongles, wherever you want. And we tried to read them. And interesting enough, it was possible for all the vendors, all the 5 vendors you saw there, except from Logitech. Logitech actually sets the readout protection flag, so you can read it out. but every other vendor just gives you the firmware. So this is some kind of interesting, and not only you can get the firmware, you can modify it and write it back. It's not always that easy. As you can see down here, some of the vendors are using one-time programmable versions of this chip. One-time programmable is a little bit tricky here. One-time programmable means the chip you will get from the vendor has a memory, everything is 11111. And when you program it, you can change a 1 to a 0, but never the other way around. So this is one-time programmable. So you can modify the firmware, but just in a very limited way. Another interesting part that we will talk about this later, now it is time for that. There are some sections of code that we did not see yet. So let's say we want to find the keys. They have to be somewhere on the keyboard and they have to be somewhere on the dongle. And this is the only way they can communicate in an encrypted way. So we read out the dongle, we read out the firmware, wrote a little program to check where we can find 16 matching bytes, because it's AES 128. The key length is 16 bytes, and we were not able to find such bytes. So we remembered, okay, there's a section in the non-volatile memory we cannot read using SPI. So my friend and colleague Matthias wrote this little piece of software. It's actually a program for the NRF24 chip. And this program does nothing more than copying the extended endurance non-volatile memory into the other non-volatile memory that is accessible from SPI. So we're just flashing this program, running this program once, it will copy everything from the one section to the other section, then we can read out via SPI again and see the whole data. And fair enough, it was worth the effort. This is from the Cherry keyboard. You can see here the dongle, and this is, as I said, from the extended endurance non-volatile memory section of the keyboard. And we were able, what you see here is actually the AES encryption key. You can find this in the data section. So, to recap, there are some interesting parts here left unknown and some questions we have. First of all, some keyboards are, well, most of the keyboards are permanently paired. So if you, well, buy these Cherry keyboard with a dongle and you lose the dongle, you can buy a new keyboard. There's no way to repair it. On Logitech devices, you can repair it, but in most cases you can't. And for that, it's very much unknown. The vendors did not tell us how they create the cryptographic key material, where the keys came from. So this is an interesting question. And of course, if you have physical access to the devices, you can read out the keys. Maybe they're stored by the manufacturing too. So if you're a friend of conspiracy theories, this is one slide from, well, I think the Snowden leaks it was. This is well, post station where they open up hardware devices to manipulate them in order to, well, make it more easy to surveillance the action they do. So this is a Cisco box, Cisco router they're manipulating. Maybe that's true for the keyboards, I don't know. At least it is easy to access the key material. And you have no clue where the original key material comes from. That's all about, that's everything I have about the readout protection, but let's talk about the next attack. Next attack was, well, exploiting some really obvious stuff. The mice of that wireless desktop sets, mice like this, is just unencrypted. So the keyboard strokes are encrypted, of course. Everybody could sniff your password while you're typing. But for the mice, the vendor said, well, that's not worth the effort. If you can see the mice moving around, that's nothing harmful you can do there. Or if you can control the mice, well, there's nothing really bad you can do that too. It's obvious that you can do something about this, and this is something we tried to prove. For this, I have a quick demo video. So this is just a proof of concept. What you see here, we wrote a little program that is able to spoof mice, well, the mice of Microsoft or Cherry. And what the tool does is actually trying to find, well, the obvious, it's spoofing a mouse and trying to find the on-screen keyboard. It's the only way to enter keystrokes. And by, well, doing this, we have a look at this later, how it tries to find the keyboard. After that, you can, well, spoof the mouse to any position you like and enter a payload. In this case, it's just a download and execute command for the PowerShell, so you can infect the system with whatever malware you want. That's remotely, just when the screen is unlocked, you can do that. So in a coffee break, if someone does not lock the screen, it's done about in 3 minutes or something like this. It has everything done and executed on the computers under control of you after that. We'll take it from here. So this was pretty obvious. Nevertheless, it was possible and exciting for us to do. So the communication is unencrypted, as I said, and unauthenticated. So we can spoof the mouse, and well, we can control it in whatever way we want. We even wrote a little program. If you have visual signs on the victim's PC, you can use your own mouse to control the mice on the remote system. That's possible too. We used the trial and error method and, well, good educated guesses to find the on-screen keyboard. It's not that easy, of course. Well, you have to guess, well, the operating system. Well, in most, well, business environments, it's Windows 7, at least today. Maybe you have to guess some language settings, mouse settings, or even the position of the on-screen keyboard. Some of these is not that hard. Well, mouse acceleration, I'm not sure. I never changed my mouse acceleration on my, well, business PC. So we can assume that is still on default. The same goes for the on-screen keyboard. If you never ever used the on-screen keyboard, the registry is saying, you can see that up here, that the keyboard will appear 100 pixels from top and 100 pixels from left. It's the default position. So you can write a little algorithm or a little heuristic that is trying to find the on-screen keyboard. Even if it's failed, well, that's not too bad. Just try again. It will not work all the time, but, well, nevertheless, if you have a zero-day exploit to own a machine in a remote way, and it will work only one out of 3 times, you will use it anyway. You have no other attack vector left, and you can use it the same way. This is just a proof of concept. You can speed up this thing more if you understand the mouse acceleration more. It's not really that hard to. It's not really that easy to find information about that. So you have to reverse a little bit more the Win32k file. That's where the mouse acceleration is. But nevertheless, it was possible. Proof of concept. If you want to improve that, the code is available. The next attack. Also a very obvious attack. Nevertheless, it took us some time to look into it. Replay attack. I will just tell you about a thing about the setup we used. So we used, for this approach at least, in first, a software-defined radio. There's the target device. So this is the wireless keyboard connected to the victim PC, and here's the attacker PC that has connected the software-defined radio. I have a video for that too. So what basically is happening, this is just a GNU radio flow graph that does nothing more than saving everything that it is able to find on the radio spectrum into a file. So no line of code here, just saving every radio transmitted data to a file. The attacker just logged in, and we recorded this thing. Now the screen is locked, and we will just replay the recorded data. And somewhere in that data, there should be the password. And as you can see, hopefully, the screen unlocks, it works. So it's super trivial. You don't have to understand anything to do that, basically. One second. So you don't have to understand anything. Just hook up software-defined radio, dump the data. You don't have to understand the protocol or something like this, and just later replay the data you recorded. And you all know how do I find the password? Well, I come early in the morning and record everything, because the first thing you will enter into your PC in the morning is the password. This is the flow graph. We later changed that to the NF playset. It's using the tools that were made available from the mouse check attack. So we can do this in a more precise way, only targeting a keyboard with a certain address or something like this. Interesting enough, this worked on all the devices. So all the devices market themselves as secure using AES encryption, and you can just record the data and replay it, and it will just enter the same keystrokes again. On the desktop set from Microsoft, it was not that easy. There's some kind of replay countermeasure, but if you do it in a certain time window or packet window, the packets will still be valid, and you can do the replay attack nevertheless. So to sum up, with this attack, you can gain unauthorized access to locked computers. Of course, if you recorded the password, you can just unlock them. And if you have physical access as well, of course, you can get the dongle of the keyboard, plug it into your own computer, open an editor, Notepad, and just replay the data. And of course, it will type everything that has been typed with the keyboard, and it will just write you the password as plain text. So key recovery made easy. So now we come to, the last, and at least for me it was the most interesting attack. We're trying to combine this attack, first the replay attack, and then together with the key injection attack. We will do this in the same way we did for the other attacks. I will just show you how it works, and then we will talk about why it works. And let's pray to the demo god. I will try to do this as live demo. 1 second. There's another PC down here. It's the victim PC. Give me 1 second. So what you see here is the locked, sorry for that. I'll make it stay on top always. What you can see here is the locked victim PC down there. So it's crappy resolution, but it will work anyway. At least I hope so. And I have connected the crazy radio dongle on my PC here. And I have the wireless keyboard for that too. Now I will launch the attack tool. First, this tool is scanning to find a keyboard. I just will try using this keyboard a little bit, and as you can see, it was saying searching, and now it's idling. The tool was able to identify this keyboard. It just uses some promiscuous mode, the promiscuous mode developed by Travis Goodspeed. So it was listening to all NF24 chipsets, and it identified the keyboards. Now, let me try this. Not enough space. I play record. By recording, I will enter the password. And that's it. Of course, it worked. And I stop recording. Now I will lock the screen again. You can see that. And if it works, just replay the thing I just recorded. So replaying it, you see it's unlocked. And let's take it a step further. I just press another button on my attacker system and don't use this keyboard over here. As you can see down here, there's the run dialog. Some attack vector is typed in there in a very fast speed, and that's it. Everything's done. So this is just a quick demo. It's just download and execute. You can put whatever payload you want in there, but the system is basically owned by you. So, fair enough. Let's have a look why this worked. Replay, we know this works, but why was keystroke injection possible? That's the tool. I just used the Cherry keyboard. It works on most of the other keyboards as well. It's not that easy on the other ones, the other keyboards doing channel hopping, but you can follow the channel hop sequence and you will be able to perform this attack as well. So the keyboards are using, well, AES 128 in counter mode. Counter mode, we will have a look at this. For counter mode, we need an initialization vector. We need a nonce. So basically this should be a nonce, and of course the counter for the counter mode. For the Cherry keyboard, we were able to identify that the counter is just 11, the EV is just the 11 null bytes, and the counter, the remaining 5 bytes for the package are a random value. We identified this, well, we manipulated the firmware of the Cherry keyboard, we changed the key to a key that we know, and then we were able to decrypt the communication and had a look at the clear text radio protocol in order to understand it better. So this is what it looks like. First interesting thing we noticed, there was, in clear text at least, there was this package, and it was there a lot. And it's actually a key release package. So if you stop typing on the keyboard and every key is released, the last package that is sent is this package. So every time you press a button, a package is sent, and if you release the button, the 11 null bytes are sent to the dongle saying no key is pressed on the keyboard. Interesting enough. Down here is the counter mode of AES. So the nonce, the counter, the secret key comes in here, encrypts. The result is used as key stream, XORed with the plain text, and that will give you the ciphertext. Let's recap on what we know. We know the nonce. Okay, this was the 11 null bytes. We know the counter. The counter is part of every package, and it's not something secret. It is just appended to every package. You can read the counter. And why do we know the key stream? Well, we knew the ciphertext. And if we're sniffing a key release package, well, just say we're recording everything and the typing stops and we record 10 seconds long and nobody's typing, then we can be pretty much sure that the last package we saw is a key release package. So we XOR the 11 null bytes, the known plain text with the ciphertext, and get the key stream. This is just how XOR works. And, well, funny thing about that, actually the encrypted key release package is the key stream, because if you XOR anything with null, it still is anything. So what we can do, we can use this package, this key stream, to encrypt. It's a valid key stream, and we can encrypt our own package with it to craft a valid package. So we can manipulate, well, any key release package to serve our purposes. This is why we can craft our own keystrokes without knowing the actual key for the encryption. Just a little short section of the key stream. But why did the whole attack work? To make this work, we have to replay. And we know replay was possible, but it should not be possible. Of course, the counter is, every time a package is sent, this counter is different. So why can we repeat a package with the same counter and it gets accepted? We had a look at the, well, that's from the example source code from NRF, and it says something down here that the counter is just a random value for this chip. If you have a closer look at the actual implementation of this random value, we will find something like this. And you can see here the HLL RNG function is used. So this is just basically the hardware abstraction layer for the random number generator. And interesting enough, hardware abstraction layer means, we looked it up in the data sheet, this chip has its own random number generator in hardware. So thinking about that, a random number generator in hardware. If you use a pseudo-random number generator, it's easy. You can use the same seed on both sides, on the dongle and on the keyboard. If they use the same seed, they will create the same random numbers. But for this, it's no way that the dongle can synchronize with the keyboard. So the keyboard's just sending a package with a random counter, and the dongle just says, okay, well, I take this counter, whatever it is, and does not synchronize in any way. And if we reuse that counter, it's okay for the dongle too. The dongle does not have any list of already used counters, just uses the counter again, and we can, is decrypting the package using that counter. It's a bit theoretical. I will try to show you this with a quick example. So this is what the protocol looks in clear text. Protocol looks in clear text, well, the radio protocol, once you decrypt it is. First there's, some bytes of modifier. This one is not used. And then the key code is there. It's basically a standardized protocol for HID devices for USB. Let's say we try to send an uppercase A. First of all, we need the key stream. Well, the key stream is just a key release package. We XOR it with our plaintext. Here the modifier for the shift, and here the modifier to set the A key. 04 is just the A key. And then we just append the same counter again because it will get accepted anyway. And that's our valid encrypted package for an uppercase A. So as you saw earlier, this works. You just have to do these 5 easy steps. You have to find the keyboard, of course. You have to find the key release package. That's also easy. And you have to do these simple XOR math and to craft your own keystrokes. And you're ready to go. Just repeat that as often as you want. And you have your keystroke injection. You can also put that into a neat little box. That's what we did also. It's just a Raspberry Pi with the same crazy radio on it and, a display and 3 or 4 buttons. It auto-detects the keyboards. First button is start, stop recording, replaying, and third button is just do the keystroke injection with a download and execute payload. Just download some executable for Windows and run it on the machine. So let's talk about the vendor's responses we got for these findings. Of course, we have our responsible disclosure policy. So we talked to Perix, no response from them after, I think 2 or 3 emails. They just did not respond. From Microsoft, regarding the code protection, they say, that's not a security issue. Regarding the mouse spoofing, they said that's just by design. There will be no security updates. The mouse is not encrypted. And concerning the replay attack, they say something, we try to fix this in this product and also in future products. In the current product, I don't know why they're trying to investigate how they can fix it, because they use the one-time programmable chip. So, there should not be any way to fix it because you cannot update the firmware on that. Logitech, they have update mechanisms in place. Even the driver, you can update your mouse or your keyboard or your dongle for Logitech devices, and they're working on it also. They try to fix that in future products. Fujitsu, basically saying the same. They're trying to fix that in future products, but they say, it's not very likely this replay attack is going to happen because it's very hard to do. But if you, just go into the internet, buy a HackF1, you will have the setup ready to go in 5 minutes or something like this. And the most funniest response, at least for me, it was from Cherry. They just said, we no longer refer to the AES encryption in order to promote the product. So they fixed the security issue just by declaring the product as no longer secure. So they will change the package of the product and everything. And if it's not a secure product, you will not have security issues. So in conclusion, all of the mice and keyboards were vulnerable at least to one of the attacks. These attacks, as you see, you can use them in real world. You can even exploit systems that are not on the internet. So you can just use the air interface from the wireless keyboard system to execute any command you want on the remote systems. And interesting also, there will no be security fixes for the current products. So there's nothing much you can do. If you want to have a closer look, this is the table we did. So we did not test everything. There's still some question marks for Fujitsu. Maybe we'll work on that in the future. But the recommendations are pretty much easy at that case. If you work in a high security facility or any place where you really rely on security, just don't use a wireless keyboard. Just stick to the wire and you will be more secure. Most of the time people ask if Bluetooth is okay. There are wireless keyboards for Bluetooth. We haven't had a look at it. I think they are better because of the Bluetooth standard. It's longer there, but I'm not sure. You have to look at it. So here are some references if you want to read up to that. And if we have time left, I will take some questions. Or if you want to see some ironic stuff, the presenter I'm holding here, which I'm presenting the whole time, is vulnerable too. He could have hacked me the whole time. That machine in front of here. We can look at that too if you want. But maybe let's start with the questions.
Thank you, Gerhard. If there are any questions, and I think there probably are, could you please raise your hand so I can bring you the mic so we get the question on tape as well. So, questions? Any questions regarding a specific keyboard you may have, or?
So yeah, the list was not complete. We checked other Logitech keyboards in the meantime, and they were vulnerable too, so it applies to a lot of products. And from the guys from MouseJack, we also saw that other keyboards like Amazon Basic, they use the same chip, they use AES encryption, and they are vulnerable to these attacks too. So we did not have all the keyboards here, but there are other vulnerable keyboards out there.
Are there any secure? So I'll have a question if nobody asks. Are there any secure solutions on the market?
Wired keyboards, so not I know of. Maybe, as I said, Bluetooth keyboards. If you use you want to use Bluetooth Low Energy, of course, because otherwise the battery is pretty much drained out in a fast way. But even in Bluetooth Low Energy, I think Bluetooth Low Energy, like in 4.2, it is getting secure. But prior to this, you can still do passive sniffing on the key exchange, and you will get the keys for the encryption. They know this attack vector. It's even in the specification of Bluetooth.
So my old IBM Model M keyboard with the PS2 adapter might be secure.
Okay.
Any further questions? We have a few minutes, so feel free. Anything?
I will be around here for the day and also tomorrow. So if you have questions, you can talk to me also.